Welcome in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show. Buck away on the honeymoon. I hope he is now set up, although I don't know time zones. He may not even be awake yet. He is out somewhere in the tropics, in the South Pacific, I believe. I am here in Phoenix, the fabulous Valley of the Sun. I appreciate all of you who are hanging out with us as we roll into Super Bowl weekend. It has been a big, fun weekend out here in Phoenix for anyone that is interested in sports. The Waste Management Open is underway, which is an incredible, awesome golf experience. And the Phoenix Suns also traded for Kevin Durant. If you are a sports fan, this is about as good as it gets. I will give you my Super Bowl pick in the third hour of the program. Spoiler alert, Kansas City fans are going to be very happy. Eagles fans, not very happy. Although, if you believe that whatever pick I make is jinxed, as some of you do, maybe even if you're an Eagles fan, you're going to be able to celebrate what I think we're going to see on Sunday. But I cannot wait for that. But I wanted to start today with a story combination that to me is so self-evident, yet rarely tied together. And that is the degree to which Joe Biden is everything that the media spent 6 years telling you that Donald Trump actually was. And I was thinking about that this morning as I was doing my prep and I was reading everything and familiarizing myself with the latest news, including, by the way, the New York Times coming out and saying, oh, by the way, maybe it wasn't very safe for John Fetterman to decide to recover from a stroke by running for a Senate race that he won and then deciding to serve 6 years in the Senate. That, of course, was self-evident to anyone that was out there. New York Times also labeled our show one of the largest purveyors of misinformation on the entire podcast universe and all of audio. I'll talk a little bit about that as well as the fake news. One thing that Donald Trump definitely got right continues to rain down around us. But I wanted to talk about this as it pertains to Joe Biden. Because when Donald Trump got elected, the Washington Post emblazoned "Democracy dies in darkness" above their masthead. The New York Times, of course, has always stayed committed to the idea that all the news is fit to print. That's their mantra. But think about what Joe Biden has done in just 2 years. And this is just a small segment of the things that Joe Biden has done that stand out to me, and you think, wow, this is kind of amazing how much of an authoritarian he has been, and yet he's gotten almost no blowback for it in the larger context. Because remember, what they tried to tell you was that Donald Trump was Hitler, Donald Trump was a fascist, Donald Trump was a dictator in waiting, and that was their fevered dream about Trump. But I just want to run through everything that Joe Biden has done in the 2+ years that he's been in the White House. Because I think when you see them all in context, it's really stark. And you can see who the actual authoritarian is, who the person with true dictator tendencies is. So just think about this for a minute as I run through it. First of all, Joe Biden tried to take control of everything related to COVID to such an extent that he tried to mandate, under penalty of losing your job, 84 million people out there get a COVID shot in order to be able to work. And he tried to use OSHA as his justification for those 84 million. Now, he certainly required the military, which has since been removed, and he certainly required healthcare workers, which the Supreme Court upheld, to get the COVID shot. But never in any of our lives has the federal government told you, you have to get this shot or you cannot go to work. Anywhere. 84 million. Private industry. It's a pretty extraordinary attempt by Joe Biden. Supreme Court struck it down. How about Joe Biden tried to use OSHA to justify an eviction moratorium. The CDC, right? He tried to say, well, you can't evict people. I should say the CDC. You can't evict people from their homes because of CDC regulations. Supreme Court struck it down, said it's unconstitutional. Supreme Court has not yet struck down Joe Biden's attempt to not involve Congress and bring about $400 billion plus in student loan removal from the individuals out there who took out the loans onto the federal government's books. Joe Biden did that without even trying to get any congressional authority. In fact, Congress would never have allowed student loan relief, the CDC eviction authority, the mandates on the COVID shot. Okay? All three of those things were unconstitutional, I believe. We still have to wait on student loan relief. But Joe Biden, dictatorially, with a stroke of a pen, totally eliminated our Congress and tried to put some of the most aggressive federal overreach that has ever existed in any of our lives. All three of those things, I believe, are going to be struck down by the Supreme Court. Okay, what else? Joe Biden's own Department of Justice executed a raid on his chief political rival at Mar-a-Lago. Imagine the reaction if Donald Trump's FBI, through his own attorney general, had raided Joe Biden over what may well have been fair, his connection to the Hunter Biden laptop. The media would have lost its mind and argued that the United States was a banana republic if Donald Trump had done that to Joe Biden. But Biden does it, and they argue that it's justified. Remember, something we've never seen in the history of our republic, Joe Biden raiding his chief political rival's home. That is something that banana republic dictators do. How about the fact that Joe Biden claimed that it was an incredible national security interest for these classified documents to be seized relating to Donald Trump while having classified documents himself that he had to know he was in possession of because he's had them for a very long time. Now this latest news, and I was reading about it, and a lot of people don't want to discuss it because it's coming out of the London Times Seymour Hersh report. Seymour Hersh is saying that the CIA is responsible for blowing up the pipeline that would have brought Russian oil and gas to Europe. The undersea pipeline that we know is blown up, but we don't know who's responsible for it. Well, now there are credible allegations that it was our own government, that the CIA decided to shut off that Russian pipeline because they wanted to hurt Russia economically. Now, they're still arguing about who could potentially have been involved in this move, but the Sunday Times, the London newspaper over there, through Seymour Hersh, has made a compelling case. Again, it's just a case, not 100% true. The Biden crime family out there is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, doing everything to try and make this a reality. So as you break all this down, so Allie, you can hear me, but we lost me. As you make all of this reality, as you put all these things together, as you put in the fact that the Biden family is in bed with Ukraine and China, as you think about the OSHA attempted mandates, as you contemplate the classified document scandal that Biden himself has, and as you think about the Department of Justice and the FBI raiding Mar-a-Lago, and then you realize that the CDC eviction moratorium has been shot down, that student loan relief is likely to be shot down, and you consider the Biden family, and you look at what the first couple of years of the Biden administration has represented, he is everything that the media, that the New York Times, that the Washington Post, that MSNBC, that CNN, that in their fevered dreams they tried to claim that Trump was. and this is important. In March of 2020, when COVID happened, if Donald Trump had truly been a fascist dictator, in most of our lives, there has never been a better time or a better opportunity for someone to have made the choice to seize as much power as they possibly could. Do you know what Trump did? He almost, probably critically, maybe too much, deferred to mayors and governors all over the country to make their own decisions as it pertained to COVID. He allowed the principles of federalism to flourish in a time of heightened emergency, a time of heightened emergency that the Biden administration has been able to prolong and aren't even going to end until May of 2023. How is it possible that everything that they told you about Donald Trump, every single thing that they told you he would do, the threats that he would bring to bear, Biden is the one who has actually done them all? And that's when you realize, that's when the light bulb should go off. It's all about power. There is no principle at play here. There is no restraint on federal power. Biden has done and attempted to do more than Donald Trump would have ever dreamed of. And for the most part, he hasn't gotten a scintilla of the criticism. If you wonder how bad and how crazy and how corrupt our media is, just think about all the things that I laid out there that are clear violations of our Constitution. Thank God we have the Supreme Court to strike down what Joe Biden has attempted to do. But don't be underestimated by, don't miss the fact that even though Biden is clearly a shell of a healthy human being, the people around him are using him, and they are advancing the most authoritarian, controlling, dictatorial mindset that, frankly, we have seen in generations. Everything they told you Trump would do, Biden's actually the one doing it. And the criticism, it almost doesn't exist at all. Look, identity theft can be a huge disruption in your life. Talk to anyone who's ever had their identity stolen, credit cards, access to their bank accounts. It's incredibly frustrating. It's important for you to understand how cybercrime and identity theft are affecting our lives. Your personal info gets exposed so often it can make it dangerously easy for a cybercriminal to steal your identity. That's why you need LifeLock by Norton. LifeLock will step up when you become a victim of identity theft, assigning a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist to work with you to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions at all businesses, but it's easy to help protect yourself with LifeLock. Join now and save 25% off your first year with the promo code CLAY. Go online to LifeLock.com, promo code CLAY for 25% off. That's LifeLock.com, and my name, Clay, as the promo code. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Want to also let you know you can reach out. We're going to have some fun today during the course of the program and allow you guys to share the way that you are going to be hanging out watching the Super Bowl. And you can hashtag us, Clay and Buck. You can give your predictions on the game. You can let us know what your setup for the game will be. Possibility of over 100 million people. I think it feels pretty good that are going to be watching this game at minimum. I know that there are people out there who say, oh, I hate the NFL, and I'm not going to ever watch the NFL again because you're angry at Colin Kaepernick. And I certainly understand Colin Kaepernick's why you would be angry at him. I think he's a total fraud. But I do think the NFL, compared to the past several years, has kind of got its footing back of, hey, we're just trying to entertain people. And there hasn't been as stultifying of a left-wing bent over the past couple of years of the league. And I think that's because people fought back. You know, Buck and I have had this conversation before because some people say, well, why would you ever be interested in something that in a sport that isn't willing to acknowledge how amazing America is and continues to tell you that America is an awful racist place. And I understand that argument. And the argument that I would make is I'm a huge sports fan. So I feel an obligation to fight to keep sports from becoming even more woke. And if you are a reader, as I believe 20 million of you were during the course of the fall, if you're a reader of the site that I run, Outkick.com, I think we're winning a lot of the battles out there on trying to keep sports from becoming just another arm of the left-wing Democrat Party. So I thought we could have some fun with this, given the fact that it is Super Bowl Eve. And you can use the hashtag Clay and Buck if you want to give us your predictions, to share during the course of the weekend, and certainly today, whether you think the Chiefs or the Eagles are going to win. We're going to post a few of the favorites. You can also share your photos, things like that. We'll share some of our favorites on the Clay and Buck website on Monday morning. And you can also, if you're not on social media, we certainly understand that. We want fan photos, best Super Bowl snack recipe, everything. You can also share your opinions on the commercials, and you can email us. We'll use some of these, like I said, on the website, and also we'll have some fun with it on Monday. You can also email us if you're not someone who is out there on social media, and I certainly understand if you don't want to be on social media. You can email us at clayandbucksuperbowl@gmail.com. That's clayandbucksuperbowl@gmail.com. And certainly, if you are a Clay and Buck VIP member, you have an ability to email us and share all of your favorite experiences, thoughts as the game gets closer as well. I wanted to get you a little bit of an update of what we got going on, too, by the way. We're going to be joined at the top of the next hour by our friend Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. And then the third hour, we're going to be joined by J.D. Vance, who is Senator, obviously, from Ohio. Each of those men will join us at the top of the second and third hour of the show. I'll also open up phone lines. We'll have some fun. It's Friday. You can weigh in on anything. Maybe you got questions that you want me to help solve. 800-282-2882. It's a Friday free-for-all. We'll have a good time hanging out on everything under the sun. Feel free to load up those phone lines if you would like as well. And in the meantime, I want all of you out there to understand that My Patriot Supply can help give you the food security you need in your life. 3-month emergency food kit will come packed. Great tasting meals prepared in such a way they can last for years. We've got 5 different kits of My Patriot Supply's 3-month emergency food kit in the Tavis household, one for each of our kids. You can go to mypatriotsupply.com, get $200 worth of free survival essentials with your 3-month emergency food kit. Everything in stock and ready to go with free shipping, too. Go to mypatriotsupply.com before the next disaster strikes. That is mypatriotsupply.com. Get your own supply kit at mypatriotsupply.com. $200 off. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. So we got a lot to discuss, but I saw this story earlier this morning in the New York Times. So John Fetterman, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, I believe he's still hospitalized. Our staff can check and see if he's been officially released yet, but he spent 2 nights now in the hospital. They've done a variety of neurological tests. They haven't really been able to figure out why he was feeling lightheaded, I believe is the report, that was the reason he had to be hospitalized. And so all these battery of tests are being run, and the New York Times has a huge profile on John Fetterman that they were probably going to write, I bet, in a very flattering way to John Fetterman. Oh, look, he's able to be a senator after all. All the people out there who said, well, how dare you question his health and whether he's up to a 6-year term in office after a stroke that nearly killed him. Well, listen to these 2 paragraphs from the New York Times, who has been defending Fetterman as the propaganda news outlet they are, and has been spending a vast amount of time telling everybody, how dare you question someone recovering from a stroke and whether they have the physical wherewithal to maintain the schedule that is necessary to be a senator representing a state like Pennsylvania. These are actual paragraphs from the New York Times article that I flagged this morning. The most evident disability is a neurological condition that impairs his hearing. Mr. Fetterman suffers from auditory processing issues, forcing him to rely primarily on a tablet to transcribe what is being said to him. The hearing issues are inconsistent. They often get worse when he is in a stressful or unfamiliar situation. When it's bad, Mr. Fetterman has described it as trying to make out the muffled voice of the teacher in the Peanuts cartoon whose words could never be deciphered. That's a paragraph from the New York Times. Okay, that's paragraph 1. John Fetterman has so much difficulty being able to simply hear what other people are saying to him that it sometimes feels like he is in a Peanuts cartoon. If you remember that teacher who speaks in a mumbled voice and you can never really understand what she's saying, being able to process information and speak is the primary job, frankly, of a senator. So, opening paragraph, John Fetterman basically doesn't have the physical capability to do this job. Oh, the New York Times is now telling its audience in February after John Fetterman has been elected in November. Here's the second paragraph right after this one. And by the way, staff says he is still hospitalized. We certainly want him to be well. On this show, I came on and told you, anybody who watched the debate against Dr. Oz knew this guy was nowhere near well and that it was, frankly, completely indefensible to allow him to stay on the ballot. But Democrats were so desperate for power and they were so terrified of what might happen in the Senate that they were willing to put someone who was as objectively ill and not able to do the job and, frankly, should have been giving all of his time to get back healthy. They were willing to keep him on the ballot because they thought they had a better chance of winning than if they replaced him with someone else. That's the truth. And I felt bad for John Fetterman. I still do, particularly because his family seems like they were culpable in also making his health worse. Okay, I read you that first paragraph. Here's the second paragraph. The stroke, after which he had a pacemaker and a defibrillator implanted, also took a less apparent but very real psychological toll on Mr. Fetterman. It has been less than a year since the stroke transformed him from someone with a large stature that suggested machismo, a central part of his political identity, into a physically altered version of himself, and he's frustrated at times he's not yet back to the man he once was. He has had to come to terms with the fact that he may have set himself back permanently by not taking the recommended amount of rest during the campaign, and he continues to push himself in ways that people close to him worry are detrimental. Let me repeat. They tried to get into machismo. I'm going to be honest with you. There's been lots of words written about me in my life. No one has ever talked about how much machismo I had and what a physically staturous individual I was. Maybe I need propaganda arm at the New York Times. Talk about my incredible machismo. But these last two sentences, he's had to come to terms with the fact that he may have set himself back permanently by not taking the recommended amount of rest during the campaign. And he continues to push himself in ways that people close to him worry are detrimental. So he can't do the job. He, in attempting to get the job, may have set himself back permanently by doing so. And currently, he is working in a job that is making it more detrimental to his health. They are setting the table here for him to step down and for the Democrat governor to appoint a new senator because they will still have that 51st vote. But what the New York Times is writing now in February is what we told you on this program in October and November, and why we said it was so important that Pennsylvania vote for Dr. Oz. But now the New York Times and the other media outlets out there that said, oh, my goodness, it's so disrespectful of someone with a disability to question whether they're healthy enough for the job. Are you kidding me? That is the essence of the job. That is what a campaign is. It's a interview, long-lasting, with the citizens of your state to see whether or not you are fit to do the job. I mean, we're talking about the Super Bowl going on this weekend. If someone has a severe injury and they can't do the job, it doesn't mean that you question whether people with disabilities should be treated with respect. But if you have a really bad shoulder that doesn't allow you to throw the football anymore, I'm not signing you to be the quarterback on my team. That's not because I feel bad that you had, I don't feel bad that you have a major shoulder injury. It's because your fitness for the job is the very essence of the job itself. John Fetterman cannot do the job of a senator. And now the New York Times is coming out and letting all of its readers know, oh, yeah, it turns out that Clay Travis and Buck Sexton and other people who watched the debate and just said, man, I feel bad for him, but this guy can't process information. Oh, it really did sound like the Peanuts teacher went in his mind, and that's why he was having such difficulty even understanding questions. Remember, there was an NBC reporter who interviewed him and told us all this, and she got immediately attacked by all of the propaganda media outlets for having the audacity to tell the truth, which was, this guy can't do the job. And so now Pennsylvania is going to have to appoint, I think, unfortunately, a new senator. Or this guy, according to the New York Times' own article, may kill himself trying to do a job that he's not physically capable of doing. Now, in the real world, what should have happened if he had a family that truly cared about his health, they would have said, yeah, Dad, yeah, husband, yes, son, we're really proud of you getting the Democrat nomination, but you had a stroke in May, and you can't do this job, and it is rash and improper and unhealthy for you to be back on the campaign trail. But in their raw demand for power, they didn't care about any of that. It's what I opened up the show talking about Joe Biden and his complete authoritarian bent. Democrats want power so desperately that they don't even care who they give the power to. Joe Biden is cognitively impaired. Every single day he gets worse. But as long as he's in that chair, Democrats can act in authoritarian mandates and seize power. And as long as John Fetterman is there as vote 51, Democrats can continue to seize power in the Senate as well. Doesn't matter whether these guys are healthy. Doesn't matter whether these guys are capable. Doesn't even matter if in having these jobs they are accelerating their own unhealth and potentially leading to their own death. Doesn't matter. It's all about the power. And frankly, I really do feel bad for Fetterman because somebody in his family should have stepped up, especially his wife, and said, you can't do this job. You're a dad. Let's get you healthy. That's the most important job you have. She didn't say it. And unfortunately, there's no indication right now of when John Fetterman is going to be able to check himself out of this hospital. He didn't even make it a month as the Pennsylvania senator before he had to go into the George Washington University Hospital. He's now been there 2 nights. We hope he's going to be well. I wish somebody would take control of his health. He should have never been on the ballot. He lied to stay on that ballot about his health. He got all the media to cover for him because they were so desperate to get that 51st seat, they didn't care whether he lived or died. It's the truth. It's awful. All right, open up phone lines, 800-282-2822. You can react to anything that I said in the first part of this show. We're going to be joined by Ron Johnson at the top of the next hour, J.D. Vance at the top of the third hour. Appreciate all of you. And you all know, look, smartphones have made it easy to record special moments in your life. Certainly a lot easier than the old-fashioned way when Dad and Mom ran around with a big camcorder up on the shoulder and then put the VCR in the tape, and you were all able to watch a lot of great family events. But what happens? You know those VCR tapes aren't made to last forever. You don't have a VCR in your house probably anymore. You may still have the VHS cassette tapes. How many of your cherished memories, how many of your cherished loved ones are on those tapes? Would you like to be able to share that with your grandkids, your great-grandkids? Would you like your family's history to endure? That's what Legacy Box does. Look, they're based down in my mom's hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee. I spent a lot of time down there as a kid. Absolutely loved it. Mom went to high school in Red Bank. My grandparents lived there on Trenton Street, right off Dayton Boulevard. And we got a lot of great memories with them from down there. And I trusted Legacy Box to help take care of my family memories, and they will do it for you as well. They have over 200 technicians that will hand transfer your videotapes, photos, film reels, all onto digital files that'll last forever so your family history is preserved. You owe it to safeguard your memories. You owe it to your family to safeguard those memories. Don't let your photos or videos continue to fade into obsolescence, potentially rendering them not able to be seen by future family members, future generations to come. It's a great gift just in time for Valentine's. Go to legacybox.com/clay for a fabulous discount on their regular prices. That's legacybox.com/clay, C-L-A-Y. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We're powering through the Friday edition of the program. Hope all of you are going to have a fantastic weekend. I understand in the open here, we lost like 15 seconds of audio. You might have been like, oh, my God, what's going on? You know, could have been the Russians, could have been the Chinese, could have also been just, a little bit of a faulty link here in the Phoenix office of the Clay and Buck phenomenon here. Appreciate all of you in Phoenix, by the way, one of about 15 or 16 different cities in America, major cities in America, pro sports cities in America, where we're currently the number one show in the country. But we started to play a parody when we lost the dead air there for like 15 seconds. Some of you may have noticed at the opening of the show. And I thought Allie and the crew took care of this, put the parody together. Why not go ahead and let you listen to the rest of that parody? Here it is.
The case of the classified docs that just kept turning up everywhere.
Mr. President, it has been an absolute pleasure serving you this evening. But, sir, there's documents in the bill you just paid?
Mr. President, I was walking Commander on the South Lawn. It appears he had some digestive issues. I couldn't use a doggy bag. If I didn't know better, I'd think he ate some documents.
Mr. President, I was doing laundry and found a bunch of documents stuffed in some socks and pants.
There's no there. I was Sandy Berger. Hey, KJP, get Hunter on the phone.
Hello, Dad? Have you seen my laptops?
Clay and Buck, voices of sanity in an insane world.
Well done by the team there, Buck, with a he doesn't do his Joe Biden impersonation. I can't do impersonations. When we dropped for 15 seconds, though, it might have given some people throwback to when we did the Outkick the Coverage morning sports talk show. It felt like that show never worked. We had Trump on a couple of times, and my number one fear, people were like, were you really nervous about talking to the president? The first time we had him on, second time? I said, no, I wasn't very nervous. My biggest fear was that our phones would just drop the president, right? And so you're having an interview and suddenly you lose the president, and it's because our hamsters in a wheel that was the tech supporting it managed to drop the president. We kept him on. So far, we've kept him on, to my knowledge, every time we've had him on Clay and Buck too. But that's the only real fear. We got a couple of callers want to weigh in on a variety of topics, and let me see who is up first here. Joshua, 24-year-old truck driver in Virginia. We appreciate all the truck drivers all over the country, keeping the country moving. What you got for me?
Yes, sir. It's an honor to talk to you. I'm a young man, and I have a lot of friends that are very liberal and refuse to pay attention to what's going on and think I'm just a conspiracy theorist. When I try to tell them, hey, look, you got to wake up. This is what's going on, and they call me crazy. How do I wake up my generation? What do we do?
It's a great question. Thanks for the call. It's something that Buck and I actually talk about quite a bit, and it's frankly one of the things we hear the most since we have taken over for Rush is I know a lot of you out there, longtime Rush listeners, you're in your 60s and 70s. I was actually out to dinner with a couple on Tuesday night, big listeners here in the Phoenix area. And there's a concern, I think, if you're in your 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe older, and you're listening right now about the direction that the country is going to go. I am optimistic. One, because I am an optimist in general. Two, I think we're going to see a spin back in a big way. And I talked about this on Memorial Day with the success of Top Gun Maverick. I think there is a desperate demand for America is awesome content. And I think that there has been such a denigration of America that has gone on, frankly, over the last decade or so, that there is a desperate want out there in this country. And I think young kids, this is interesting to think about, are going to rebel against this woke culture. Because most kids, for better or worse, rebel to some degree against whatever their parents are embracing. And I think you're going to see in this young group, I really do, a repudiation of woke culture and the woke mindset and the idea that you're offended by jokes. I can see the germination of this just beginning. And so that's how I'm optimistic. I think you do it by loving freedom and embracing fun, which is what we try to do every day. Up next, Senator Ron Johnson. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We rolled through the Friday edition of the program. I'm out here in Phoenix getting ready for the Super Bowl over the weekend. I'll give you my prediction in the third hour of the program, and I'm about to tweet it out. You'll get an early preview of that, and you can share your own. We're joined now by Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, I know we've had you on since you won re-election in November, but Joe Biden seems to enjoy attacking you by making up stories about you. I know you're used to that, but he traveled to your state and made some claims about you. What did you consider to be the biggest whoppers? And I hope you're having a good weekend, or early start to your weekend. Thanks for coming on with us.
Well, great. Hope you're doing well. Well, I think the president might have just forgotten the fact that I already won re-election, and he doesn't have to worry about attacking me for another 5 or 6 years.
You're going to be in office for longer than he is. I feel good about that.
But what's amazing, I actually really appreciate what Fox News uncovered, is back in 1975, Senator Joe Biden was proposing exactly what he's, for example, accusing Rick Scott of saying that he proposed sunsetting every government program every 4 years, and talked repeatedly about freezing Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid benefits. So, I mean, not only is he a liar, he's a hypocrite. So he comes into Wisconsin, he did this in the campaign, did it again yesterday, basically saying that I want to cut or end or put Social Security in the chopping block. I've never said that. It's a complete lie. What I have said is I want to save those programs. And I've said the way to save them is we need to start reducing the out-of-control deficit spending, pay attention to our massive debt, and it's that deficit spending and massive debt that is the greatest threat to Social Security, and politicians like Joe Biden, who now, as President Biden, simply will not take a look at federal spending and start reining it in, start prioritizing it.
So there's a lot going on right now. I know we were hoping that you would have control of a committee, that the Republicans would take control of the Senate, but the House has really been unveiling a lot as it pertains to Twitter, misinformation campaigns, and everything else out there. And I want to ask you about this question in particular, because I was hammering it yesterday, and I know it's something that you would consider to be incredibly integral as well. So we know that the FBI's had the Hunter Biden laptop since December of 2019. We also know, smoking gun evidence, that they were providing briefings to big tech companies arguing for them to be prepared for Russian disinformation potentially connected to the Hunter Biden laptop. To be fair, we don't know whether the FBI agents giving those briefings had also been privy to the investigation into Hunter Biden's laptop. What we do know, Senator, is that some people at the FBI, we don't know how many, would have known that the laptop was real and would have been in some way either allowing or encouraging the briefings to big tech to suggest that the laptops were not real. And I know that involved you as well in what the FBI acted. Who do we think was the puppet master here trying to rig the election in 2020 based on the Hunter Biden laptop? And are we ever going to know who inside the FBI basically ordered these code reds?
Well, one of the reasons I called for in my testimony the House investigators to call and interview every one of those 51 intelligence officials that signed that information operation letter. Okay, remember that they said that the Hunter Biden laptop had all the earmarks of a Russian information operation. No, that letter was an information operation that interfered and had an impact on our election to a far greater extent than anything Russia ever could have hoped to accomplish. So, first of all, we need to find out who masterminded that letter. But, one thing I think Chuck Grassley kind of took as part of his testimony, really focused on the sabotage of our investigation into the Bidens. And it was multiple actors. I mean, we had Democrat senators setting us up. We had the FBI setting us up, giving us unsolicited briefings that were nonsense. They told us nothing. I knew I was being set up. They did later leak it to smear me in 2021 and impacted the Wisconsin election as well. So what is key about that December 2019 date is, yes, the FBI definitely had that information. We have a whistleblower telling us that they were told, do not look at that laptop, okay? But we have evidence, little piece of the puzzle. Since that point, I point out in my testimony, when the FBI left the computer shop, one of the agents said basically, it is our experience that people don't talk about these things, don't get in trouble. And I said that is the opening salvo in a 10-month operation to sabotage any revelation that the laptop existed or any bad information. So, people have to really focus on that. The FBI spent 10 months working, giving us unsolicited briefings. Basically, by the way, we were offered that computer the day after our report dropped in September, but we didn't take possession of it because we do our due diligence. We went to the FBI. What do you know about this? They never told us what they knew about it. They gave us the runaround for weeks until John Paul McIsaac gave it to Rudy Giuliani and then the New York Post. So people really have to understand the gravity of what the FBI was doing, how pervasive this was, how the media played part of this. Democrat senators played a role in just using Russian disinformation. They've been using it for years, starting with the Hillary Clinton emails, the DNC hack. We still to this day don't know, was that really Russia that hacked into that? But it sure worked effectively, didn't it? So I don't have all the information. I have so much suspicion. There's so many things that indicate a massive diversionary operation.
Amen. And I'm glad we are ecstatic that you won a re-election to be able to ask so many of these questions as a sitting senator. But I want everybody out there listening to us right now to understand, look, Twitter and Facebook and all these different tech companies, they have a lot of people, I think, that were carrying water for government, for Democrats. We all know that. But what is scarier to me, Senator, is the rig job that you just talked about. From inside of our own government, our own taxpayer-funded FBI, there is a cabal, there is a collusion that is going on there. We don't know how many people there were, but they made a calculated decision inside of the FBI to try and rig the election by arguing the Hunter Biden laptop wasn't real. When they 100% knew at the top of the food chain in the FBI that it was real, and those same people, by and large, Senator, are still there, and we're going to have a new election cycle coming up in 2024. I don't know how anybody in the American public with a functional brain can be confident with those same people in positions of power when they're the puppet masters is what I'm calling them. And you can say, oh, look at how the Twitter and Facebook people are dancing. They're the puppets. But who's the puppet master? We still don't know, and that's the essence of what we have to get to, right?
It is the global left in mass. I don't think that's what our side has really understood well enough yet, is how pervasive, how literally global this is. And that's what I tried to point out in my 10, 12 minutes worth of testimony yesterday is the pervasiveness of this. I mean, all of the actors, it is the left, and they have infiltrated every institution of our country. They started with the universities. I mean, this is all the Saul Alinsky Rules for Radical playbook. I mean, they've been following that for decades, and they've been very effective at it. So when you control universities, you're teaching journalists. You're teaching our educators to indoctrinate our children. You control our media, and so they get away with falsely accusing conservatives of exactly what they are doing. And so we need to come to grips with how unbelievably effective they are, how effectively they have infiltrated all of our institutions of power, how they control the narrative. We're not winning this. It's not a level playing field. It's not a fair fight. And when we have our elected officials, pretty well kowtowing to the left as well, signing on to their massive out of control deficit spending, it gets pretty frustrating from my standpoint. Not really willing to admit, how far behind the eight ball we truly are, and how our freedoms are so severely threatened. Listen, I appreciate Clay and Buck, how effective you have been and how you've been outspoken about the freedoms taken away during the pandemic. You're one of the few. I mean, there aren't many people in Congress really screaming about what happened during the pandemic, but you have your eyes open. We just need to open up a whole lot more eyes.
Amen. And I'm still furious about it. Buck's out on his honeymoon right now. Hopefully he's resting up so he can come back ready for the fight. I'm still fired up, too, about so many things. But just last week, Senator, we had, and I said on Friday of last week, I never would have believed that this would be the topic that we would lead the show with. We had a Chinese spy balloon go all the way from Alaska across the entire United States and then exit off the South Carolina coast. What in the world is going on that we allowed that to occur? And how is it normalized in any way that a foreign adversarial country is allowed to have a spy balloon that they control, and we just permit it to happen? I mean, sometimes crazy things happen, and I think we get used to them existing. I can't believe that happened, and that basically people are like, well, it got shot down once it was in South Carolina, no big deal. To me, that's an unbelievable act of aggression by China, and I thought Biden's response was incredibly weak.
Well, one of the points I've been making, the major point since this story is broken, is why did it take so long for the administration to start talking about this?
Yeah.
One of our huge advantages is we have an open society. Now, it's also a disadvantage, but we need to utilize that open society. And what I have witnessed now that I'm in Washington, D.C., now I'm not of this world. I'm an accountant. I'm a manufacturer. But now that I'm there, we so overclassify material. These, information is power. And so certainly within the administrations, and Congress has just willingly given up its constitutional authority to the executive branch, and they take it. And one of the ways they maintain power is they control all the information, which is why it's going to be very difficult for the House to get information out of the FBI. I mean, you're already seeing the legal fight. They're just giving Comer and Jordan the middle finger. They'll continue to do that. But we need to be more transparent. We need to force transparency out of these administrations. And in terms of this balloon incident, we should have been made aware of this immediately. The administration should have talked about, hey, China, we have now detected this, and then laid out, if there's a rationale for letting this come across so we can track that, tell the American public about this. There's no reason to keep this stuff secret, but they keep it secret because they keep information and they maintain the power. We need to demand greater transparency across the federal agencies.
Last question for you, and it's far less significant than everything we've been talking about so far. Who wins, Chiefs, Eagles, Super Bowl Sunday?
I'm not a I don't make those predictions. I just hope for a really good competitive game. I mean, I don't care who wins. It's not the Green Bay Packers there, so I don't care. I just want a really fun game to watch, and that means it's a close game and a fair game, and not decided by a stupid call. I want to see excellence. I want to see the competitors compete, and I want to see a good, close game that somebody wins. I don't want to see somebody lose it. I want to see somebody win it with just excellence.
Outstanding. Have a good time up in Wisconsin. We're excited to have you for 6 more years, and we appreciate you giving us some time on this Friday.
Enjoy the game. Take care.
Will do. Senator Ron Johnson there, dodging a prediction. Just wants both teams to play well. I can respect that. Unless the Packers are involved. I know he's a big Packer fan. And they got to figure out what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers, by the way. Did you see Aaron Rodgers is going to make a decision after going and spending several days in complete darkness? I'm not even making that up, by the way. I can't think of anything more miserable than disappearing into complete darkness for multiple days to contemplate life. But that's the way he's going to decide what to do with his career going forward. He's an interesting dude. If your cell phone service with Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T, you're getting hosed. I know, because Pure Talk will provide you with the same great service for a fraction of the price. How? Pure Talk services same towers as the big companies on the same nationwide 5G network. You're going to get blazing fast data, talk and text for just $30 a month. That's probably half what you're paying Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Another benefit of switching, knowing the company's run by a veteran and employs a U.S.-based customer service team. No outsourcing, switching's easy. Takes about 10 minutes. You can keep your phone and your phone number. Plus, Pure Talk has a first-month risk-free guarantee. Try it. If you're not completely happy with your Pure Talk service, you'll get your money back. Support a company, after all, that supports you and the things you believe in. Dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250, say Clay and Buck. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We roll through the Friday edition of the program. I'm out here in Phoenix. I've had a fantastic time. Met a lot of you who are listening to the show in the Phoenix area, and we know all over the country a lot of you are going to be tuning in over the weekend for the Super Bowl, which is taking place on Sunday out here. Next year's Super Bowl, by the way, is going to be in Las Vegas. And if you thought the Super Bowl was wild normally, I can't even imagine how crazy it is going to be in Las Vegas for the first time ever when it is there next year. But there's several different things that are going on. You just heard Senator Johnson talking there. And I think what he is saying is so important, but I just want to keep hammering it home because I think there are a lot of Republicans out there that really don't understand what happened with the FBI and the way that they intentionally tried to create the idea that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation so Joe Biden could get into the White House. And while we focus on Twitter employees and Facebook employees, and I think rightly they should have to stand and testify and explain their decision-making as it pertains to the Hunter Biden laptop and censorship in general, we can't miss that those are employees of private companies, and they were acting at the behest of taxpayer-funded FBI elite, high-end employees. Christopher Wray's still in charge of the FBI. How is that possible? How is it possible that we still don't know what the FBI has even done with that Hunter Biden laptop? I'm not one of these people who comes out there and tells you, hey, everybody who works at the FBI is awful. I think there's tons of people in the FBI that are really good at their jobs, that are focused on trying to go get bad guys. But I think there are many people at the top of the FBI right now that are trying to rig elections, and they already did it in 2020. Why are we not trying to root those people out of the agency? Why are we allowing them to remain in power as we come up on another cycle? And what in the world have they been doing for 3 years with the Hunter Biden laptop? Again, I want puppet masters. I don't want puppets. The tech company employees are the fall guys. We're ignoring the people at the very apex that made all of this happen. They're getting away with rigging an election. Right now, if your business has 5 or more employees and managed to survive COVID, you could be eligible to receive a payroll tax rebate of up to $26,000 per employee. Real money when you do the math. Not a loan, no payback. It's just a refund of your taxes. How do you get your business this refund money? By going to getrefunds.com. Their tax attorney specialist, little-known payroll tax refund program. They do all the work, no charges up front, just share a percentage of the cash they get back with you. Businesses of all types can qualify, including those who took PPP, nonprofits, even those that had increases in sales. Team at GetRefunds.com's already returned over $3 billion. They can do it to you, too. Here's how you do it. Go to GetRefunds.com, click on Qualify Me, answer a few questions. Payroll tax refund only available for a limited amount of time. Don't miss out. GetRefunds.com. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Buck's out on his honeymoon. He'll be out the rest of this week, obviously, and also all of next week. I'm out in Phoenix getting ready for the Super Bowl. I'll do the show here as I am on Friday, return on Monday, and then I'll be back home in God's country, the state of Tennessee. But I wanted to talk about this Chinese spy balloon again for a moment here. I opened up the show talking about how Joe Biden's everything they told you Donald Trump was, an authoritarian who will do whatever it takes to grab power and use it relentlessly. And certainly, I think you can tie that in with John Fetterman, because the moment that Democrats were able to elect John Fetterman, who is presently in the hospital for a third straight day, the New York Times said that he's maybe not going to be able to recover, partly because of the stress that he put his body through during the campaign. They'll do anything for power. But they won't do anything to stand up to other powers, such as China. And you heard me talking at the beginning of this hour with Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. And I don't want to normalize or pretend that this is something that we should get used to. We just had a Chinese spy balloon move across the entire United States, and we didn't do anything about it. They violated our territorial sanctity, our own country's airspace, in an effort to glean information they could use against us, potentially in a war. And Joe Biden just said it really wasn't that big of a deal. Listen to this audio. Cut 26.
Wasn't it a major security breach for the United States? Just the fact that the balloon came into the airspace and flew over the country for so many days?
No, look, the total amount of intelligence gathering that's going on by every country around the world is overwhelming. And the idea that a balloon could traverse, break American airspace is, anyway, it's not a major breach.
Are you kidding me? It's not a major breach that our chief foreign adversary had a spy balloon traverse the entire United States. Again, I don't want to normalize what we just allowed China to do. China went all the way from Alaska across the entire continental United States to South Carolina. And unless this spy balloon had been visible to the naked eye, I don't think the Biden administration would have even told us this happened. And this ties in with why Joe Biden is so uniquely incompetent for office. John Fetterman is in the hospital right now for a third straight day. He's 53 years old. He may die, unfortunately, because of what he put his body through as a part of the campaign instead of getting healthy. Joe Biden's not a healthy man. When he got that call, whenever they bothered to notify Biden about the spy balloon, you guys were listening to this program. Basically, when I found out that there was a spy balloon going across the country. And I bet a lot of you who still have functional brains, unlike Joe Biden, and who have some cognitive understanding of the fact that it is a major deal when our chief adversary decides that they're going to violate our territory and our airspace to potentially glean information that would make it easier for them to beat us in a war. I'm sorry, that is the essence of a big deal, Joe Biden. When I heard that happen, my first thought is immediately shoot it down. If a Chinese spy balloon enters the country intending to get information to allow them to better beat us in a war, I don't want that to happen. I am going to prevent it. My mind immediately says our territorial sovereignty is violated. That balloon comes down. Either they didn't tell Joe Biden about this, or Joe Biden, because this had not happened before, didn't have any idea what to do. And so he allowed this to go all the way across the country, and he told everybody, oh, it was because we were afraid that if we shot it down, somebody might get hurt on the ground. Have you guys flown over the country before? It's one of my favorite stats. Most of the United States is not very populated. Next time you have no cloud cover and you're on an airplane, look out and look down below and look how much open terrain there is. You know, statistically, every single person in America, every family unit, could live in the state of Texas alone on 1 acre lots. And there wouldn't be anybody else in the entire United States. If you want to visualize how much open space there still is in this country, think about the map. Everybody could be in Texas. Everybody could be on 1 acre in Texas. And nobody else in the rest of the country, there would not be a single person. You ever looked at how much land there is? They could have shot down this balloon tons of places. They should have certainly done it in Alaska when it first came in, and there would have been no risk at all. I think what happened is they said, we don't want the Americans to know about the Chinese spying. I think that was the decision. Can you imagine what the reaction would have been if Donald Trump, he wouldn't have done it. Can you imagine the reaction if Donald Trump would have allowed a Chinese spy balloon to go all the way from Alaska, then come across the United States, come into Idaho, Montana, come across all the middle part of the country, and then exit off the coast in South Carolina? They would have said that Donald Trump was a Manchurian candidate, that he was allowing China to spy on us. They wouldn't have questioned the decision not to shoot down the balloon. They would have, at the New York Times, at the Washington Post, at CNN, at NBC, ABC, CBS, all of those outlets, they would have immediately said, Donald Trump let this Chinese spy balloon travel across the country because he wanted to aid and abet Chinese spying, because he's in the pocket of China. You know in your heart that's immediately what they would say. If Donald Trump's listening right now, he may well be, he's nodding right now and saying, you're 100% right. They wouldn't have just said, why isn't he shooting it down? Which is what Republicans said. And then Democrats said, I don't know why they're trying to make this political. Well, because our chief adversary has a spy balloon. You weren't even allowed to say, why are we not shooting this down? But the Democrats and their propaganda media allies would have immediately shifted and said, Trump's allowing this to happen because he wants China access to all of our sensitive spy data, because he's in the pocket of China. How in the world did we let this happen? And how in the world has it already been normalized such that this story is just kind of disappearing? Can you imagine, for those of us who are old enough to remember, if Russia, the Soviet Union at the time, if a Soviet Union spy balloon had gone across the entire United States, it would have been basically a declaration of war in the 1980s. Do you think Ronald Reagan would have allowed that to happen? Do you think George Bush Sr. would have allowed that to happen? For those of us who remember the Cold War against the Soviet Union? China is a far more dangerous adversary, in my opinion, than the Soviet Union ever was in the 1980s. And we just allowed China to fly a spy balloon across our entire country and didn't do a thing about it. And we have totally normalized it. You just heard, can I grab that Biden cut again as we're going to break here? Just the last couple of seconds of the Biden cut? Well, let's play the whole thing. He doesn't answer the question well. Let's play this one more time. Just listen to what Joe Biden is trying to say. It's no big deal. So what if China just flew a spy plane?
Major security breach for the United States. Just the fact that the balloon came into the airspace and flew over the country for so many days.
No, look, the total amount of intelligence gathering that's going on by every country around the world is overwhelming. And the idea that a balloon could traverse, break American airspace is, anyway, it's not a major breach.
Anyway, not a major breach. Is this a leader that China's afraid of? They just sent one of their sovereign crafts across our entire country, potentially loaded it down with explosives, because really, this is probably a test to see what they can get away with. And anyway, not a major breach is Joe Biden's response. If it's not a major breach, why don't we have spy craft constantly going over Chinese airspace? You know what China would have done the moment one of an American spy balloon went into their country? They'd have shot it down. If you're Taiwan and you just heard Joe Biden say, anyway, not a major breach, are you thinking to yourself, that guy's got our back? He's definitely going to stand up to China if they decide to invade Taiwan. Weak men make wars. Joe Biden is a weak man. He's not even cognitively capable, I don't believe, of making the rational choice that every single one of you just about would have made if you had been told, hey, a Chinese spy balloon just entered into Alaska and is trying to glean military information and help to benefit from this balloon traversing the country. The president is the ultimate decider. The decision was simple here. Shoot it down. We have territorial sovereignty. When a foreign adversary attempts to enter our airspace and spy upon us, we shoot down that craft, particularly when it's unmanned here. Not a difficult call. Biden let it come across our country for days. And then when he's pressed on it, credit to the questioner there, he says, anyway, not a major breach. Anyway, not a major breach. Can you imagine Ronald Reagan saying that? Can you imagine George Bush Sr. saying that? Can you imagine any American president with a functional brain saying that China sending a spy balloon to glean information so they could potentially beat us in a war into our own airspace was not a major breach? Shameful. We can't normalize this. It's an embarrassment of the country. And Joe Biden just continues to show us that he does everything wrong. The Bidas touch, whatever he touches, turns to crap. A lot of pride comes with gun ownership, keeping yourself properly trained with your firearm. I'm convinced that's why gun ranges stay as busy as they are. Men and women want to keep their skills sharp. Do you know there's another way to train? It's called Mantis X. Device attaches to your firearm like a weapon light. It connects to your phone via Bluetooth. Great thing about Mantis X is you can train at home or on the range. You get real-time data-driven feedback on your skills, and most people improve their shots within 20 minutes of using it. Mantis X has a wide variety of programs to choose from that will challenge your skill level. In fact, Mantis X is so good, our military men and women in the Army, Marines, and Special Forces have started using it in addition to spending time on the range. Start improving your shooting accuracy today. Get yours at mantisx.com. That's MANTISX.com. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Hopefully the Chinese spy balloons are not here again. But are you with me that that's just insane? Anyway, not a major breach. What is a major breach to Joe Biden? Does it make you wonder? What would China have to do for Joe Biden to say, yeah, that's a major breach? Because I think before last week, if I had come on the air and I'd said, hey, I got a crazy idea for you guys. I think China is going to fly an unmanned spy balloon all the way from Alaska across the entire country, stopping over many of our military installations in an attempt to glean as much information as they possibly can about our military capabilities, things that they can get from a balloon that they can't get from a satellite in space. And we're going to allow the Chinese to go across the entire country doing this spying, and then we're going to let them leave the country, and then we'll shoot it down once they get to the Atlantic Ocean, and they can't possibly get any more information from us. If I had told you that 10 days ago, y'all would have told me I was crazy. You'd be like, Clay, there's no way China is going to put a spy balloon in our airspace, and there's no way we're going to let them just sit over the top of our of our military bases, and there's no way people are going to be standing out in their yards covering their eyes, gazing up at the sky, looking at a Chinese spy balloon in America. We would shoot that thing down in a heartbeat. We'd never let it cross the entire country, stopping at military installations along the way, especially if that Chinese spy balloon was also equipped with explosives and could serve as a potential test to use an unmanned spy balloon flight that wouldn't cost that much money in the grand scheme of things that China could potentially deploy in the event that we ever went to war with China. Y'all would have said I was crazy. We just had it happen. And Joe Biden is already saying not a major breach. So my question for you is, if that's not a major breach, what has to happen for it to be a major breach? Does China have to actually invade California for Joe Biden to say, yeah, it's a major breach? Do they have to simultaneously invade in multiple states? Do they have to, in some way, put military boots on the ground, Red Dawn style? Do we need to be sitting in our living rooms looking out the window, all of a sudden, People's Republic of China dropping airplane invaders? I mean, what is a major breach to Joe Biden? That's the follow-up question. When he says, anyway, not a major breach, I'd like to be sitting across from Joe Biden and say, okay, what is a major breach then? In your mind, what would need to occur for me to say, this doesn't seem good? Because I'm going to be honest with y'all, feels like kind of a major breach. I don't remember this ever happening in my life. And I think it's so instructive to contemplate how this would have been covered if the Soviet Union had done it in the 1980s during the Cold War. What would Ronald Reagan have done? What would George Bush Sr. have done? How would the media have covered it? And can you imagine Ronald Reagan sitting down for an interview being asked about the Soviet Union invading our airspace with a spy balloon, stopping over our military installations? Can you imagine the reaction if he had said that wasn't a major breach, not a big deal? I think people would have lost their minds, justifiably. Joe Biden just said, anyway, not a major breach. And a lot of people are turning the page and saying, yeah, I kind of agree with him. I don't. What does Senator J.D. Vance think? He's up next with us here on Clay and Buck. Final hour of the week. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show. Buck is out on his honeymoon. I am in Phoenix. Appreciate all the great people that I have met out here so far this week. We have been diving into a large variety of topics, as we typically do. Encourage all of you to go subscribe to the podcast. You can search out my name, Clay Travis. You can search out Buck Sexton. Boom. You can join the tens of millions of downloaders out there, and you can hear this program and many other unique offerings in the podcast universe from both Buck and myself. We are joined now by the final guest for the week. He is J.D. Vance, recently elected senator from Ohio. And Senator, first of all, thanks for making the time for us. I want to start right here. I was just talking about Joe Biden saying, and this is a direct quote from him, anyway, not a major breach, when directly asked about the Chinese spy balloon that traversed the entire United States. Doesn't it seem like that's kind of a major breach to you? And if it's not, what in the world would Biden consider to be a major breach?
Well, it is a major breach, and I actually attended a classified briefing yesterday, so I'll be a little bit careful about what we learned and what we didn't learn or what we still don't know. But I will say, having sat through that brief, I came away with two thoughts. One, it confirmed my view that we should have shot this thing down the moment it entered North American airspace. We have to remember that it started out in Alaska. We were aware of that on January the 28th. It went through a major chunk of Canada, completely unoccupied, uninhabited territory, maybe sparsely populated parts of Canada where we could have easily shot this thing down, and we should have. The second thing is it was a major breach. In fact, we don't fully know what the Chinese learned from it, but we know that the balloon had intelligence gathering capabilities. We know they learned a lot about some important American military installations. And we know that we actually aren't fully aware of exactly what they learned. And that's a big problem, right? You don't want a foreign balloon of America's biggest adversary floating overhead for days without being fully aware of what they're gathering. So it was a major problem. It should have been shot down. And I think that Joe Biden is being really, really careless when he tries to downplay this. He should level with the American people. I would actually respect Biden more if he came out and said, look, this was a mistake. We should have shot it down earlier, and it's a big problem, and it suggests a major escalation from the Chinese.
You just got elected from Ohio, and you wrote a fabulous book, Hillbilly Elegy. I bet you saw James Carville go on MSNBC and call Marjorie Taylor Greene white trash. You guys are around this. We're around the same age, you and me. I'm from Tennessee. You grew up in Kentucky and Ohio in that area. You know that is among the most pejorative terms out there that you can toss on someone. He also said she dressed like white trash. When you look at Democrats basically becoming the party of the woke, white, college-educated, I'm curious how you would respond to that, because Carville helped to get Bill Clinton elected in 92 and 96. He's a Louisiana guy. I'm stunned that he would go on. You can have lots of issues with people, a variety of backgrounds, but to call her white trash, it just felt like such a window into what Democrats have become, and even that Carville himself has become that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a few thoughts about this, Clay, and I could probably talk about this for longer than you have time. But first of all, James Carville calling somebody white trash. I mean, isn't that the ultimate pot calling the kettle black moment? The second reaction I have to is, Marjorie, as you may know, is a good friend of mine. I think she doesn't get credit from the media for actually being much more thoughtful than they realize, and a much bigger leader, I think, in our movement than people realize in the future. But look, this is why Democrats lose working class white people. That's my entire family, because they speak about us with such incredible disrespect and derision. And by the way, Clay, there is no group in America that you could get away talking about like that without losing your job or losing your livelihood. The double standard, people are aware of it, and it's why all of this talk about white privilege and all these other things is completely bogus, because people know that if you are a middle-class, working-class white person, the media can talk about you like you're a sewer rat, and they'll get away with it, and that's a big double standard.
And you see it in particular because Ohio's a perfect window into that, right? Ohio used to be a toss-up state, and because Democrats have become so derisive in the way that they talk about so many people in the state, people who have to work for a living, blue collar, I don't even know how they can get back that group, right? I mean, I know maybe it shouldn't have been staggering to me, but to go on MSNBC and say it so explicitly, it was just crazy to me.
Yeah, no, it's a big part of the reason why they're suffering politically. Look, people want to have basic respect from their political leaders. This is America, after all. We are not ruled by kings. We're ruled by nobody. We're led and governed by our fellow citizens. And if you don't have respect for people, how can you possibly expect to earn their vote? It's interesting to compare what Carville said to Biden's State of the Union address, where, look, there were all of these problems with it. He was doing a victory lap on an economy that's a disaster. He didn't even mention the Chinese spy balloon. He didn't sound great. He didn't look great. We can go through all the problems. But the one thing that I think Republicans, we got to be careful about with Biden is that while a lot of people don't like his policies, they don't hate him at a personal level. And he talked about forgotten towns, and he talked about bad trade deals and the loss of manufacturing, the loss of dignity that comes along when you lose a job. I thought that was actually pretty effective politically. But the problem with Biden and the Democrats is they are completely led and surrounded by people like James Carville who really hate a big chunk of the population in middle America. And you can't run from that, and you can't pretend it isn't there when you're a Democrat.
You're talking about 2024 as we look forward. I believe you have endorsed Donald Trump for 2024. In your mind, is it pretty much a foregone conclusion that Biden is going to be the guy for Democrats? And if so, what does that tell us about the Democrat Party?
You know, I don't know, Clay. It's crazy to me that it's anything close to a foregone conclusion because he clearly is not the same. I met Joe Biden once in 2016, reasonably briefly. He's just a fundamentally different person than that 7 years later. So it's shocking to me that he could lead the country potentially for another 6 years. But he sounded like a man during the State of the Union who was going to run again. So I do think he's the likely Democratic nominee. And, you know, I think Trump is the likely nominee. I think he's certainly the front runner. Obviously, I've endorsed him. But I think we're going to have a tough primary on the Republican side. At least I expect that we will.
When you look forward and think about what's going to happen, you saw the State of the Union from Joe Biden, and I bet you even picked up on the fact that he sounded a little bit like Donald Trump. I mean, he didn't sound anything like the Joe Biden who has governed the first 2 years. What happens for the next 2 years? You're now in the Senate. What can get done? What should get done in the remainder of the Biden regime?
Well, look, I think that Joe Biden realizes politically that the border is a disaster. And this is one area where, you know, I think it's the most important crisis that we face as a country. And if Biden is willing to meet us halfway or any way, it's where we should be most willing to cut a deal for the American people. If we can stop or at least reduce the flow of illegal migrants, of illegal drugs, of criminal activity across the border, we should do it. I think it would be good for Biden politically. But I don't care about that. I just want to stop the border crisis, and I think that's the most important thing that we can do. I think there's maybe some room to work on what we're doing with China, on beefing up our industrial capacity. You know, we need to be manufacturing weapons that we could use, God forbid, if we get into a conflict with China 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. Right now, our country is not capable of producing the weapon systems we would need for any potential future conflict. Again, you hope that it doesn't happen, but the best way to prevent it from happening is to make sure you're ready for it. I think there are potentially ways to work with Joe Biden on that. But look, by and large, the Democrats are already running for re-election in the Senate. We're not working all that hard because the Senate Democrats have us in a lot of recess because they're trying to defend their political territory. They're not thinking about governing. So I don't think a whole lot's going to get done. We can prevent the bad, maybe get some things accomplished on the border in China, but that's the posture for the next couple of years.
I know you've probably not had much time or experience with him, but John Fetterman was elected at the same time that you were. He's been in the hospital now for 2 nights. He's in there for a third day. What has your experience been like with John Fetterman, and what do you think about his potential health prognosis so far as you can tell?
You know, I mean, first, I wish the guy the very best. You know, he's got some serious health problems. It's been very clear in communicating with him, the little that I have, that he has some serious hangovers from the stroke. But on the one hand, look, we can pray for his recovery, and I certainly have and will continue to do so. And on the other hand, acknowledge the unbelievable dishonesty of the media, where when people raised his health as a potential problem for him serving, the media shot it down, did not investigate it, did not really ask the questions that should be asked of anybody after a serious health consequence or emergency, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. So I think the fact that John continues to struggle is sad. I also think it's an incredible indictment of the media. They should have been on top of this from the very beginning. The people of Pennsylvania should have been made aware of those problems, and a lot of them weren't because the media didn't do their job.
No doubt. All right, easy question for you to close out here. I imagine you'll be watching the Super Bowl. I imagine you're also still ruing the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals lost in the way that they did to the Kansas City Chiefs. What happens? Who wins? Why?
Well, look, Clay, I think that if the Kansas City Chiefs are playing not just the Eagles, but with the referees on their side, like they did against the Cincinnati Bengals, they're going to win a massive Super Bowl victory. I don't know, the Eagles can't beat both the Chiefs and the refs. I have poked some of my colleagues who are from the Kansas City area about this, but I will never get over the officiating of that AFC Championship game. And I got to be honest, I don't really care who wins, but I'll certainly be watching like everybody else.
By the way, as a Bengals fan, what did you think of the Cincinnati mayor's proclamation? We played that, I think, on Monday of maybe a couple weeks ago. It's one of the craziest proclamations I've ever seen. For people who don't remember, the Democrat mayor of Cincinnati basically gave the most trash-talking thing that I've ever seen any politician put out there. I would think people in Cincinnati are still kind of fired up about that because clearly the Kansas City Chiefs players took note because Travis Kelce was ripping the mayor, which I've also never seen after a win.
Well, obviously he's a Democrat. I'm a Republican, but I admire the fire in the belly because, look, a lot of us were pissed off about this. I am not Clay. I have never, I think in my life as a sports fan, complained about the officiating as much as I have the last couple of weeks. I've just never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I know it was a mess. There's no doubt at all that it was a mess. Well, we'll talk to you again soon. Appreciate all the work you're doing, and thanks for making the time with us here on this Friday.
All right, take care, man. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, for sure. That's Ohio Senator J.D. Vance checking in. Still, I think there's a lot of people out there in the state of Ohio who are Bengals fans, still fired up about the way that AFC Championship game got officiated. I understand it if you are. Mike Lindell and his team at MyPillow, they're hyped to announce the MyPillow 2.0. Look, these already have arrived in my house. The MyPillow 2.0 is fantastic. Patented adjustable fill of the original MyPillow, but now brand new exclusive fabric made with temperature-regulating thread. And you can buy one, get one free for a limited time with the promo code Clay and Buck. Comes with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. It's going to hook you up in a big way. It's on the Travis family beds. It can be on yours as well at a very affordable price. Here's how you do it. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener special square to get this buy one, get one free offer on the MyPillow 2.0. Enter the promo code Clay and Buck. You can also call 800-792-3269 to get your MyPillow 2.0 today. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. So I saw this story and I thought to myself, is this real? This is funny. So Joe Biden has refused an interview with Fox in advance of the Super Bowl. And this is not necessarily uncommon at all. The network that carries the Super Bowl, and right now it's CBS, NBC, or Fox. They rotate every 3 years. Starting in a couple of years, they will add ABC to the rotation. So there will be, the Super Bowl will be on either ABC, CBS, NBC, or Fox, free over-the-air broadcast networks, every 4 years. And Joe Biden is refusing to sit for an interview with Fox. Now, look, Joe Biden's not capable, as you just heard, anyway, not a major breach, as he said when he sat for an interview trying to explain the Chinese spy balloon. But Joe Concha does really good work at Fox News. He's been on the show as well. And not doing a sit-down interview for the Super Bowl, and I believe Brett Baer, who is a 100% straight down the middle, in my opinion, journalist who works at Fox News, would have conducted that interview. But Joe Concha says, and I agree with him, that it's gutless. Let's play cut two.
For Joe Biden not to do the Super Bowl interview, by the way, that would be a huge audience for him. This is a tradition that goes back to 2004. So George W. Bush sat down with every network, and even Barack Obama sat down with every network, including this one, and Donald Trump did the interviews. But for him not to do this, he is the most protected president and the most handled president and the least accessible president that we have ever seen of the TV era. And for him not to do this right now, gutless is the right word.
It's interesting. It is gutless. Now, because they're starting to get a lot of criticism, Karine Jean-Pierre put out a statement and said, the president was looking forward to an interview with Fox Soul to discuss the Super Bowl, the State of the Union, and critical issues impacting the everyday lives of Black Americans. We've been informed Fox Corp has asked for the interview to be canceled. I've never heard of Fox Soul, and I'm not taking a shot at anybody who works there. but I have heard of Fox News. You might have as well. It's the most watched network on cable. No one else has ever demanded that they be interviewed by a niche segment of an overall network. And so this is pretty crazy. What it really represents is what I think you're going to have to get used to as Joe Biden prepares for the 2024 election. They are going to aggressively restrict his sit-down interviews with virtually anyone, and the people that they do allow to conduct sit-down interviews with him are mostly going to be members of the propaganda left-wing media outlets. So the fact that Brett Baer, who I think does a really good job on his show, was not allowed to interview Joe Biden, where, as you heard Joe Concha say, it has become a tradition. There are tens of millions of people watching. I had the numbers, I think it was 27 million people watched Joe Biden's State of the Union on Tuesday. Over 100 million are going to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. So if you are the president of the United States and you want to reach out to the biggest possible audience to speak with, why in the world would you turn down Fox News? To me, this is a no-brainer. If you truly want your message to get out there, the tradition and the trend is that you do these interviews. And so not doing the interview and then demanding that you be interviewed by a group that no one's ever heard of before, frankly, is just part and parcel of Joe Biden, I believe's cowardice. Like everything else, the cost of ammunition has gone up in the past year, making every trip to the gun range more expensive. That's why I want to tell you about a cost-effective alternative to keep your skills sharp. It's called Mantis X. Mantis X attaches to your firearm like a weapon light, techniques referred to as dry fire practice. Connects to your smartphone via Bluetooth, and in minutes, you're up and running with a system that allows you to train from home. So many of the best shooters are now using this no-ammo, all-electronic way to help to train. And here's how good it is. 94% of Mantis X users improve within 20 minutes. It's a pretty good report card. Mantis X, a military-grade technology at an affordable price and a must-have for every gun owner. If you believe in your Second Amendment rights, you must also act on your Second Amendment responsibility to be competent in your shooting ability. Start improving your shooting accuracy today. Get yours at MantisX.com. That's MantisX.com. Welcome back in. We have evidently, in the last few minutes, reports have emerged, and we'll maybe have some audio for you at the end of the program, that we have shot down another object somewhere over Alaska, potentially another Chinese spy balloon. Details are still emerging as we are in the process. Again, New York Times, Pentagon shoots down an unidentified object over Alaska, possibly a second balloon that broke 9 minutes ago. So we will see what happens. Now, what I would say, and here's a little bit more breaking news on that, the White House says the U.S. military shot down an object flying at 40,000 feet in U.S. territorial waters over Alaska in the last hour. So again, maybe more details coming out. At a minimum, it sounds like Joe Biden has finally decided that maybe it is, in fact, a major breach to allow foreign aircraft to come into the United States and fly across the entire country. And obviously, this is also a major moment here of disrespect in the fact that China, having just sent a balloon across, is now potentially going to be trying to do it again. This is supposedly much smaller than the Chinese spy balloon, about the size of a small car. So maybe what's going on is China is trying different objects to penetrate American airspace to see how we respond. But that news is out there and has broken in the last 10 minutes. So if we get any further information about that between now and we close out the program, we certainly will discuss it in further detail. But remember, the Chinese spy balloon initially entered in Alaska, and reports are that this object has been shot down off the coast of Alaska. So maybe we have finally decided that Chinese foreign aircraft is not allowed to traverse American skies, but we will see what exactly the report is as these details come out. Certainly, I would imagine Sean Hannity will be talking about it, and we will discuss it for sure on Monday, by which time all of this information will be out there. Remember, it was about a week ago that news broke, I think almost exactly a week ago, on the Friday edition of the program that we discussed that Chinese spy balloon. A couple of stories out there that I also want to hit. There is a story, I don't know how many of you saw it, in the New York Times, ripping this program alongside of Rush Limbaugh as one of the foremost purveyors of misinformation on the audio waves in the country. I believe the New York Times ranked us as number 3 in the nation for purveying misinformation, according to producer Ali, who sent this information to us yesterday. It is based on a study by the Brookings Institute. I want to put this out there for everyone who might be willing to share this with the Brookings Institute. I will extend an open invitation to the Brookings Institute scholars who have been analyzing the audio of this program and claim that we are among the foremost purveyors of misinformation in the country. I will extend an open invite to anyone from the Brookings Institute that would like to come on this program next week and explain what misinformation we have been sharing with all of you, our esteemed audience, and make the case that we are among the foremost purveyors of misinformation in the country, which is what their allegation is. I would like to hear the specific instances of misinformation that they allege we have been sharing with all of you. I will give the Brookings Institute scholars the opportunity to come on this program and make the case to all of you that we are regularly spreading falsehoods to you. I would like to hear what their metrics are. I would like to hear their evidence. Open forum invite. We don't run and hide on this program. If you're going to attack us in the pages of the New York Times and argue that we are misinformation authorities, the third worst in the entire country, both this show by name and Rush Limbaugh by name, attacking not only this show presently, but also the legacy of Rush Limbaugh, I want them to come on with the specifics and tell this show what we, in their mind, have shared with all of you that is misinformation. So you can judge for yourself. I bet that we will not get a response, but consider this to be a public invite to the Brookings Institute. Because here's what's going on with this, in my opinion. This is the way they go after our advertising and our distribution, right? They say, oh, Clay Travis and Buck Sexton, you can't be allowed to listen to them. Google, you have to restrict any of their links. You have to restrict their YouTube videos. Apple, iTunes, how in the world would you let tens of millions of people download this program when it is a top purveyor of misinformation in the entire country? Of course, misinformation is so broadly defined. Buck and I both endeavor every single day. You listen to this program, you know, if we get a fact wrong, we come on and try to immediately correct it. I do not believe, for anybody that does 3 hours of live programming, that there are very many shows out there in the country that have fewer factual errors on a day-to-day basis than we do. But we get things wrong. And when we're aware of them, we come on and we try to tell you immediately. But you'll note what happens is we have expanded the universe of what facts are and what misinformation is. So that if we share facts with you and then it leads to an opinion, oh, well, that's not permissible because that's misinformation. And then you know what often happens is what we tell you we're months ahead of, and then everybody else starts to catch up, and they say, well, they never correct the fact that what we did was misinformation. And I'll give you an example of that is out there right now. Study just came down. Turns out people are dying of heart attacks way more than they did before COVID. Story even the Today Show did. Headline, since COVID, more young people are dying of heart attacks. Oh, what? That sounds like something you might hear here. Media's catching up. The age group hit the hardest, reading from the article. People between 25 and 44 who have seen a 29.9% relative increase in heart attack deaths over the first 2 years of the pandemic. So 30% higher than would have been expected. You've probably noticed this in your own lives. There's a lot of people, young, otherwise healthy, 25, 44, suddenly dropping dead. Heart attacks are also up in people between the ages of 45 and 64, nearly by 20%. And heart attacks are even up in those over 65 who have seen nearly a 14% relative increase in the amount of heart attacks. Now, in this entire article, you know what they don't mention as a potential cause of these increases in heart attacks? COVID shot. Entire article says this is what happens when people get COVID. Now, maybe that's true. Maybe there are going to be more heart attacks in people who got COVID. I've had it twice. I hope it's not true. But don't you think that maybe it would be worthwhile to mention the COVID shot, something that was mandated by the government, as potentially being involved in why heart attack deaths are up nearly 30%, 29.9%, in people aged 25 to 44? I think that's a fair question to ask, particularly because the data overall shows that almost everyone under the age of 45 who gets COVID has almost no impact from it. Yet we made all those people, many of them, get the COVID shot in order to be able to go to school or to be able to work or to go to military. Is this misinformation? Is the Brookings Institute upset that I would share this factual information with you and then say, hey, let's discuss what might be causing that? Because that, to me, seems like what the job should be. Hey, here's a piece of factual data. Now let's discuss why this piece of factual data exists. That, to me, is the very essence of our job. Is that misinformation that I said, hey, could the COVID shot maybe be involved in a massive increase in relative heart attack deaths in young people? Doesn't seem outlandish to me. In fact, that's the entire basis of science. Something happens, and then we try to figure out why it happened. And people toss out all sorts of hypotheses. It could be that heart attack deaths are up 30% because of the Chinese spy balloon. I think it's unlikely, but it could be a hypothesis. And obviously I'm being hyperbolic and being ridiculous, so the Brookings Institute understands, right? There are legitimate and illegitimate potential causes of everything. Discussing them when it's unclear why they might have occurred is the very essence of what an informed public should do. Because I would think, call me crazy, if we are giving COVID shots to people that don't need them, and in fact, instead of protecting them, the COVID shot for young people is adding any degree of danger at all to our overall lives and the lives of our kids and our grandkids, I think that's kind of important. And I think those are very significant questions to be asking. I think what you'll see, Brookings Institute, is that this show has been way ahead of most of the ignoramuses in the media in explaining and discussing data that is significant in all of your lives. And we've been proven correct an awful lot of the time. But I just wanted to put that out there. The Brookings Institute is welcome to send their most esteemed misinformation expert to come on this program and tell all of you who are listening right now that we, Buck and myself, are a couple of imbeciles who are making the world a worse place by spreading misinformation every single day. I'd like to know what they consider misinformation to be on this program. We come back. I'll give you a pick on the Super Bowl and ride off into the weekend with all of you. Also update you on a couple of more of the details that are coming out about what exactly we shot down off the coast of Alaska. I guess Joe Biden maybe has decided that foreign aircraft, maybe they are actual major breaches. We've got a cut for you. We'll play it for you when we come back. Appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This, obviously, is Clay and Buck, and I want to tell you about Tunnel to Towers. They've been helping Americans ever since one of our darkest days of 9/11. When a first responder or military service member doesn't come home and young kids are left behind, Tunnel to Towers pays the mortgage on the family home to lift the financial burden and bring stability. For severely injured veterans and first responders, Tunnel to Towers builds mortgage-free smart homes, giving severely injured heroes the ability to live more independent lives. Through their veteran homelessness program, Tunnel to Towers is providing housing and services to homeless vets across America. More than 500, in fact, in 2022. More than 1,500 coming in 2023. Because all veterans who honorably served, whether in peacetime or war, deserve our nation's gratitude. People who put their lives on the line for our country and our communities need your help now more than ever. Help America's heroes and their families. Join us in supporting Tunnel to Towers on its mission to do good in their honor. Donate $11 a month at T2T.org. That's T2T.org. Welcome back in. Closing up shop, Friday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show. Going to give you my prediction. And then I'll go into the latest thing that is happening with the Chinese getting something shot down. We don't know exactly, but I'll play the John Kirby clip for you in a moment. I believe Kansas City Chiefs are going to win 24-20. I think this is going to be a game that Patrick Mahomes takes over. I like Travis Kelce for the first touchdown. I like the under in this game. You can grab this clip. We'll play it on Monday if I'm totally wrong, and I will own it. But I think Patrick Mahomes wins Super Bowl number 2, and the good people of Kansas City win a second Super Bowl. And the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts will emerge as the losers in this particular game, despite the fact that obviously they've had a fantastic season as well. All right. Breaking news. That is my pick. You can share your picks, hashtag Clay and Buck. You can also email us whatever your picks are and your experience over the Super Bowl. And that email address is clayandbucksuperbowl@gmail.com. Certainly everybody in the Clay and Buck VIP can share recipes, best dishes, whatever else. It'll all be up at Clay and Buck. Our crew will get them there. All right. I want to make sure that we give you the absolute latest, as I told you we would do as we went to break. We've got a couple of different cuts. Let's play the first one from John Kirby. I'll react, and then we'll play the second one. We have shot down an object off the coast of Alaska. Listen.
So I can confirm that the Department of Defense was tracking a high-altitude object over Alaska airspace in the last 24 hours. The object was flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. Out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of the Pentagon, President Biden ordered the military to down the object, and they did, and it came inside our territorial waters. Those waters right now are frozen, but inside territorial airspace and over territorial waters. Fighter aircraft assigned to U.S. Northern Command took down the object within the last hour.
Okay, that just happened. That's John Kirby, spokesperson for the Pentagon. Let's also hear the second clip here for a little bit more detail.
Was its appearance like the Chinese aircraft?
No, it was much, much smaller than the spy balloon that we took down last Saturday. The way it was described to me was roughly the size of a small car, as opposed to a payload that was like 2 or 3 buses size, right? So much, much smaller, and no significant payload, if you will.
Okay, this is a big deal because it further accelerates China's clear attempt to probe our territorial defenses. Because, again, we'll find out more details about this, but it begs the question of whether the first Chinese spy balloon, larger, more significant, and turned into a major international incident. And if now China has sent a new smaller surveillance craft of some sort to try to enter American airspace again, it's not only incredibly insulting and disrespectful, I would argue now it's becoming an accelerant in what is effectively a Cold War with China. More details on this will emerge throughout the course of the weekend. We certainly will be talking about it on Monday. While I appreciate the Biden administration shooting down this object, it also begs the question, if you really did the right thing last time, why did you let the spy balloon in to go across the entire country and decide that you had to shoot down this one? That would suggest that the Biden administration is now admitting we erred in allowing that spy balloon to cross the country. It's also suggestive that China basically decided, potentially, hey, we can put whatever we want in American airspace, and they'll do nothing more Monday.